A life is not buried if a page of history is not torn. Could Dai Viet have become the intellectual center of Asia? Let me take you into an alternate timeline, where Nguyen Trai was not convicted, and a new declaration was written. In 1442, Dai Viet faced a political shock. When King Le Tai Tong suddenly passed away at Le Tai Vien, the residence of Prime Minister Nguyen Trai, the tragedy did not stop there. Less than a month after the king's mysterious death, Nguyen Trai and his concubine Nguyen Lo were accused of conspiring to assassinate the king and sentenced to the extermination of 3. The Le Tai Vien case not only ended the career of a founding hero, but also severed a stream of political and academic thought that could have changed the nation's destiny. But what if history had taken a different turn, if Nguyen Trai had not been convicted? To answer, we need to re-examine the entire political, social, and power context of that time. After the successful Lam Son uprising, Le Tai Loi ascended the throne, but ruled for only 5 years before his death. His son, Le Tai Tong, succeeded him at just 10 years old, plunging the court into regency and power struggles among the meritorious officials, particularly Le Sat, Le Non, and later Trin Ka. In such circumstances, Nguyen Trai was a very unique figure, not belonging to the military faction, not of noble birth, yet possessing broad scholarly influence and political prestige among the people. This made him both valued and suspected, if King Le Tai Tong had not died at his residence, or if the king had passed away in the palace with a clear cause determined by the royal physicians, such as a severe illness, malaria, or an accident. The story might have been different. In a reasonable assumption, we can imagine that the king fell seriously ill a few days earlier, and court officials summoned a royal physician to Le Tai Vien for care. During the critical illness, Nguyen Trai proactively requested to return the king to the palace, and thereby demonstrated transparency, avoiding initial suspicion. Additionally, suppose there was a political faction supporting Nguyen Trai, comprising scholars from the Quoc Thu Giem, civil officials loyal to the ideal of putting the people first, then the wave of attacks against him might have been weaker, especially if the official who examined the king's body was not manipulated by the old military faction but was objective and honest. In a society without modern forensic science, the power of those delivering medical conclusions was immense. East Asian history has witnessed many wrongful cases exploited as political tools, later exonerated by posterity. Yu Fei of the Song dynasty, a general framed by Qin Wei, was posthumously rehabilitated after the court change. Wen Tianxiang, a minister of the late Southern Song, was beheaded for not yielding to the Yuan army, but later became a symbol of integrity. Nguyen Trai, if he had survived that calamity, would have been proof of the court system's ability to self-correct. Moreover, the external context also supports this hypothesis. In 1442, the Ming dynasty was facing multiple internal crises, especially after the death of Emperor Xuanzong and Ming left a power vacuum. Dai Viet, then recovering from war, needed a politician like Nguyen Trai, skilled in soft diplomacy and firm domestic governance. And finally, the personal factor. Nguyen Trai, unlike many other meritorious officials, did not directly engage in combat but served with intellect and scholarship. He was a historian, poet, and theorist, which might have made him an easy scapegoat when crises occurred. But if circumstances had been favorable, and the people in court recognized the need to preserve the historian for the future, history might have been different. From a life and death event, we pose a hypothesis. If Nguyen Trai had been exonerated, survived, and continued to contribute, would Dai Viet's ideology and politics have entered a new era 100 years earlier? That is the overarching question in the parallel story we are about to enter. Escaping the extermination of 3 clans, Nguyen Trai emerged from the shadows of history not just as a survivor, but as a figure tempered in political fire, ready to reshape the nation's destiny. Being exonerated not only saved his life and reputation but also allowed him to accumulate more prestige, becoming a symbol of liberation from factional hatred and court prejudices. Upon returning to the court as a senior advisor or minister of rights, Nguyen Trai chose to rebuild trust through wisdom and ethics. He did not launch any purges against those who had attacked him, but quietly gathered civil officials, scholars, and local intellectuals to form an unofficial center for ideological reform, called the Independent Literary Platform. Here, Nguyen Trai drafted a post-war manifesto. No longer a call to arms against foreign invaders like the Great Proclamation of Hun, but a political platform on governance, pacifying the people, upholding morality, and sustainable development. He emphasized restoring the people's trust after the war, streamlining the bureaucratic apparatus, enhancing the role of local intellectuals, and introducing the non-script into the education system alongside Chinese character. A bold move in a court still heavily influenced by Chinese Confucianism. The initial reaction from powerful factions in the court was cautious. The military faction that had supported Lasat and Trinh Ha still held influence, but Nguyen Trai's choice of dialogue over retaliation gave them no pretext to attack. Moreover, Nguyen Trai himself did not seek substantive power. He did not engage in military or financial administration, but focused on building the academic and ideological foundation for Dai Viet. In that context, he gradually became a symbol of civil governance, like Li Thuong Kiet after resisting the Song, or Zhang Liang during the Han unification. His ideology was seen as a moral compass in a court chaotic with power struggles. A crucial turning point occurred in the year Mao then, when Nguyen Trai was invited by the young king Nguyen Trai, successor to Tai Tong, to serve as an unofficial national mentor, responsible for domestic policy direction. He proposed an administrative reform program named Ten Kop Dan Quan, including resurveying land registers to reduce taxes, reassigning officials based on merit, and allowing border regions to elect local officials from among talented scholars. The program was piloted in some prefectures in the Midland regions like Ninh Thuận and Thanh Hóa, and showed clear results. The people became more honest, social order stabilized, and agricultural output increased significantly. From then on, Nguyen Trai was hailed as the sower of Reconstruction, a symbol of post-war political wisdom. But he did not stop at social reforms. During a visit to the National Academy in the year Mao Go, Nguyen Trai proposed establishing a library, a place for storing national documents, and also a center for compiling historical records and laws. There, he initiated the revision of the Le Dynasty legal code with the help of scholars who had followed Chu An, laying the foundation for Dai Viet's legal thought. By surviving wisely and constructively, Nguyen Trai not only proved his worth, but also opened a new path for Dai Viet, where wisdom and the people's hearts unite. Instead of allowing politics to be dominated by hatred and court infighting. After gradually restoring his position in the court and completing internal reforms, Nguyen Trai began to look beyond the borders. He understood that a nation could not prosper if it remained closed off internally, especially in the context of East Asia undergoing significant changes in the mid-15th century. According to that vision, Dai Viet needed a flexible foreign policy without losing its identity. And Nguyen Trai was the one to lay the foundation for that policy. Around the year 1447, when Nguyen Trai was gradually consolidating power, Nguyen Trai began presenting to the court a plan of proactive diplomacy with culture leading the way. The focus was on building Dai Viet's independent position before the Ming dynasty without confrontation, through the path of scholarship and cultural diplomacy. Under his guidance, Dai Viet's envoys like Nguyen Trai not only brought tribute but also carried poetry, scholarly books, and legal codes compiled by Nguyen Trai himself. The Ming dynasty at this time was entering a post-crisis period after the Jingnan Rebellion and the death of Emperor Xuanzang. The Ming court, though still strong, was facing many challenges from the north. Remnants of the Mongols and internal strife like court factions. Nguyen Trai grasped this weakness and proposed to the Dai Viet court to maintain a clever stance, respecting from afar, showing reverence but not dependence. To consolidate that position, he proposed establishing the Dai Viet school of thought, taking the ideological axis of Confucianism, Buddhism, and indigenous Taoism as the core, compiling it into used for teaching in schools and academic exchanges with culturally similar countries like Korea and Japan. Not long after, a delegation of Vietnamese scholars was sent to Goryeo, Korea, bringing Nguyen Trai's poetry collection, La Dynasty Laws, and maps of the Red River Delta region. The special point of this policy was not aimed at territorial expansion or military influence, but affirming Dai Viet's cultural stature on the East Asian intellectual map. Some scholars compare this policy to Japan's Meiji Restoration period, but going in the opposite direction. Instead of westernization, Nguyen Trai chose the path of localizing Eastern values. In the court, many were cautious about opening up academically, fearing foreign influence. But Nguyen Trai skillfully argued that exchange to strengthen roots, learn to preserve the way, be strong to avoid war. A country with rights becomes strong, with learning becomes prosperous. From then on, the court began to agree to establish an academic exchange institute, receiving envoys from distant lands and spreading Dai Viet literature abroad. Not only with the Maine, Nguyen Trai also promoted maritime trade with Japan, Siam, and the Java Kingdom. He proposed establishing coastal security stations, similar to privileged ports, where foreign royal ships were received, merchants controlled, but local customs and laws were still respected. This policy helped Thang Long and Hoi and become regional centers for exchanging goods, books, and techniques. From a geopolitical perspective, Nguyen Trai understood that soft power from ideology and scholarship could help Dai Viet gain advantage without expansion. A strategic map analyzed by him and scholars of the Institute of Additional Texts outlined Dai Viet's key position as a bridge between North Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Indian Ocean, half confidential in the national treasury. This mission was later inherited by Le Tonton, partly why Dai Viet maintained prosperity for nearly half a century. In a lecture at the National University, Nguyen Trai once concluded, "If domestic popular support and foreign respect are maintained, then there's no need for swords to preserve the mountains and rivers." With such ideas, he was no longer just a poet, a politician, but someone redrawing Dai Viet's new standing in a turbulent East Asia. After achievements in diplomacy and shaping cultural status, Nguyen Trai returned to focus on his longest-lasting and most influential career, education and scholarship. He realized that without a strong intellectual class knowing how to protect national ideals, all reforms would be temporary. From 1450 onward, he began reorganizing the entire national academic system, which was still fragmented and imitating Chinese models. With support from King Lin Tong and collaboration from many scholars inside and outside the court, like Luong Dak Bang, Wu Hu, and later scholars who followed Chu En, Nguyen Trai established the National Academy, a central academy equivalent to today's academy. This was not only a place to train examination candidates but also a research center for law, geography, agriculture, history, and medicine. Nguyen Trai advocated reforming education from the roots. Instead of just studying the 4 books and 5 classics, the National Academy incorporated Dai Viet literary works, patriotic poetry, and practical knowledge like irrigation, soil science, and statecraft. Notably, Chu Nam was elevated to an official language used in teaching and examinations, alongside Chinese characters. This not only paved the way for cultural independence but also brought knowledge closer to the common people. Another prominent reform was expanding examination opportunities for all social classes, especially children of farmers and artisans. Nguyen Trai believed that talent was the nation's vital energy, and that energy should not be limited by bloodline or origin. Examinations were conducted anonymously, grading only papers without considering background, thus revolutionizing talent selection. To ensure fair and civilized law enforcement, Nguyen Trai directed the compilation of the Dai Viet National Code, with clear, transparent, and easy-to-understand directions, bilingual in Han Nam, and disseminated down to the villages. This code was explained at village lecture halls, precursors to village schools, helping people understand their rights and duties, thereby enhancing legal awareness. Not stopping at content reform, he also proposed building a school system at the prefecture level and district level, following a pyramid model from prefectural schools to village schools. In each place, he endeavored to appoint those with moral qualities and knowledge as lecturers, not prioritizing those with titles. Border areas like Tuy and Quang, Lam Son, Quang Nam were prioritized for school establishment, using education as a tool for national unity and social stability. The National Academy also conducted practical research projects, improving farming tools, planting irrigation, recording medicinal herbs and folk traditions. Nguyen Trai established a separate folk history department tasked with collecting stories, customs, and dialects from various regions, creating an unprecedented, vivid, and authentic cultural map in Dai Viet's history. Within 10 years of its establishment, the National Academy had trained over 2,000 scholars, of whom more than 500 were appointed by the court to hold official positions in various localities. A new class emerged, the administrative scholar officials, skilled in both academics and administration, adept at applying laws and understanding the people's sentiments, stability and extend the central government. Nguyen Trai did not hide his ambition to turn the National Academy into a knowledge center for the entire region. He once proposed establishing an East Asian Humanities Conference, inviting scholars from Borneo, Ryukyu, Siam, and Java for academic exchange. Although his plan did not materialize during his lifetime, it set a precedent for the next generation to follow. Notably King Le Tonton with the Dao Dan Association and brilliant diplomatic missions. Education, according to Nguyen Trai, was not just for passing exams but for understanding the people, governing the country, and preserving the nation. Thus, he laid the foundation for a true academic empire where knowledge became a national treasure, and every citizen had the right to access truth, morality, and law. In Orthodox history, Nguyen Trai was a young king, ascending the throne at just 12 years old, and heavily influenced by powerful ministers, leading to a short and tragically ended reign. But in the parallel history where Nguyen Trai lived, not only was he not wronged by history, but he also became the supreme royal advisor to the young king, redirecting the entire governance process. From the early years of his reign, under Nguyen Trai's guidance, Nguyen Trai received comprehensive training in literature, law, and political theory. He was not confined to the palace but was taken to important prefectures and districts like Thanh Hoa, Nghệ An, to learn practical management. This allowed the young king to mature early and develop his own governance style. Gentle with the people, firm with corrupt officials, Nguyen Trai built for Nguyen Trai a governance ideal based on 3 pillars: transparent laws, open education, and the people as the foundation. From there, the king implemented a series of administrative reforms, abolishing unreasonable taxes, simplifying household registration, resurveying land, and redistributing public land. Fields divided equally, rice shared fairly. In the field of official recruitment, the court ended the habit of selecting people based on lineage. Provincial and metropolitan exams were improved with strict regulations, prioritizing genuine talent. Especially, scholar officials, those from the National Academy, were sent to serve as officials in districts and prefectures, creating an administrative network that was educated, conscientious, and visionary. Foreign affairs were also a highlight under Nguyen Trai and Nguyen Trai. After decades of forced submission to the Main, Dai Viet shifted to a policy of peace without weakness. Envoys were professionally trained in Chinese language and culture but also carried their own identity through poetry, medicine, and crafts. Poetry and Dai Viet. But perhaps Nguyen Trai's greatest influence lay in ideological direction. Nguyen Trai became the first king to issue an edict encouraging the use of Nam script in official documents at the district and prefecture levels. This sparked a strong Namization movement, impacting literature, politics, and national thought. No longer bound by Chinese script as before, the common people began producing poetry, educational books, and folk experiences in their native language. Within the court, these reforms inevitably caused friction. Some senior traditionalists believed that National Advisor Nguyen Trai was going too far, breaking with tradition. But unable to deny the social effectiveness and popular support, they were forced to retreat. As usual, Nguyen Trai did not attack, only continued to use results as evidence. By the spring of 1646, Dai Viet had become one of the most stable kingdoms in the region. The government was clean, rice was plentiful, and public knowledge was elevated. Many foreign observers compared the Nguyen Trai era to Vietnam's early Meiji period. but not due to Western pressure, rather due to endogenous wisdom and Eastern enlightenment. In a late-year audience in 1649, Emperor Nguyen Trai personally issued an edict conferring upon Nguyen Trai the title of Grand Preceptor. Simultaneously, he issued an edict to preserve Nguyen Trai's teachings in national history for later generations to study. The speech that day was recorded in Vietnam's national records as follows. There are those born not to rule, yet they create dynasties. There are words not issued as decrees, yet they forever become the path for the people. By the late 1460s, with domestic stability and growing influence from academic and diplomatic reforms, Dai Viet began to expand more strongly on the Southeast Asian map. But notably, this expansion was not based on military force, as seen in most feudal dynasties, but was led by culture, education, and a humane political model. Nguyen Trai, though old by then, remained the soul of this soft strategy. He advocated using Vietnamese knowledge, thought, and values to permeate border regions and extend influence to neighboring countries through trade routes, marriages, and academic dissemination. In the South, instead of pressuring Champa with force, the Dai Viet court under his counsel proposed a policy of co-farming, co-learning, co-writing. Educational stations were set up in Binh Dinh, Con Hoa, teaching Chu Nam, farming techniques, and Vietnamese law, enabling Chon people to participate in local administration. As a result, thousands of Chon families integrated into society, creating an unprecedented model of soft assimilation in the region. In the West, a series of merchant delegations sent by Nguyen Trai to Cambodia and Siam carried Dai Viet products like textbooks, silk, medicinal tea, and handwritten Nam literature. Righteous gathering halls. In Angkor and Ayutthaya, local historical records began noting the influence of Vietnamese thought in governance and education. Simultaneously, the port system from Hai Phong to Hoi An was consolidated and planned to become international trade hubs. Many merchant ships from Japan, Ryukyu, and Malacca creating a dynamic network of cultural and economic exchange. Foreign merchants, through contact with Dai Viet scholars, brought back translations of Nguyen Trai's poetry, indigenous medical texts, and agricultural laws. Proclamation on pacifying the Wu. S. final projects was a comprehensive treatise on Dai Viet. In it, he predicted that by maintaining popular support and basing development on scholarship, Dai Viet could become the intellectual center of Asia without military expansion. This ideology was inherited by Nguyen Trai and the younger generation of intellect. By the end of the 17th century, the court had completed the construction of 5 academies. The Southern Academy represented the geographical south from Bang Long to Nha Dien, Huan Hoa, Gia Dinh, and Lam Son. Each academy not only trained domestic students but also welcomed international students from Laos, Champa, Khmer, and the islands of Java and Malacca. The Southeast Asian studies of Vietnamese characteristics began to form, something that in actual history only began to emerge in the 20th century. Thanks to this different choice, choosing words over swords, dialogue over invasion, Dai Viet not only maintained independence but also set an example for the region. There was no Lamac's civil war, no divided northern and southern dynasties period, no dependence on Sinicization or colonization. This is a historical stream that didn't actually exist, but it could have happened. And what made the difference was just one vindication, one life saved, and a wisdom not suppressed. Nguyen Trai, if not unjustly executed, could have changed the entire intellectual landscape of a region. And that torn declaration, if preserved, might not only have been a protest bell but also the prelude to a centuries-long academic symphony. Subscribe to Realm of the Unseen channel to see the latest videos.
If the veil stirred, subscribe and meet the next encounter.